Grace Point. My name's Murphy Gill, and my wife Michelle and I have been coming to Grace Point now for about a year and a half, and we absolutely love it, as I know you do as well. We're in these online times right now. It's so weird. It's such a strange time, but we're doing it until we feel like that it's safe for us to all come back together. So hopefully that will be soon, but we will do it as long as is necessary. A couple of quick things about today. Pastor Josh is still in his series called Meaning Making. And the subtitle on that is How Might a Progressive Christian Lens Inform Our Experiences and the Ways We Find Meaning in Such Challenging and Uncertain Times. So I really hope that you enjoy the service today. I hope it is both helpful and encouraging to you today. Thank you.
Welcome to Grace Point.
We are a progressive Christian church.
A safe place to deconstruct or reconstruct.
To question and to grow. We are welcoming, affirming, and fully inclusive.
Regardless of age, race,
sexual orientation, gender identity,
physical abilities, or marital or economic status.
We strive to rejoice in our belovedness, serve our community,
respect our differences,
and love each other well.
We are people who accept and value you for you.
We are Grace Point.
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 Good job. We are Grace. No, just me. Oh. We are Grace Point.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I don't have to earn it because I deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I didn't know, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you gave it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Don't have to earn it because I deserve it. Still you give yourself No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I don't have to earn it because I deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
Good morning, Grace Point family, and hello to each GP kid and to each GP youth who are watching with us. I hope you're all doing really well. Spending time with our GP family through our Zoom gatherings is a highlight of my week. GP kids and GP youth gather each week through Zoom. GP youth gather on Fridays at 7 p.m. GP kids gather on Saturdays at 12 p.m. Both gatherings are an opportunity for us to say hello, to get to know each other, to catch up with each other, and to have a whole lot of fun. On Thursdays at 7 p.m., I grab a book from our growing GP Kids book collection right behind me, and I go live with a virtual story time on our GP Kids Instagram at Grace Point Kids TN and on our Grace Point Church Facebook page. This week we are reading a GP Kids favorite called I Am Love, a book of compassion. It is written by Susan Verde and illustrated by Peter H. Reynolds. I hope your families will join us for these special times of community connection online this week. Parents and caregivers, I have posted our newest discussion guides to our GP Kids and GP Youth Facebook groups. As you're scrolling through social media this week, take a peek at these groups ever so often to stay up to date on what is being created for and shared with our GP Kids and GP Youth families. I also encourage you to post questions and to share resources and to connect as a community in these groups. I'm also emailing out these resources. If you would like to be a part of our email list or you would like to be a part of our Facebook groups, email me, letting me know at lisa@gracepoint.net, and I will make sure to include you. If your GP kid or your GP youth have a hip hip hooray kind of moment coming up, or your GP youth or GP kid would really enjoy receiving an email or some snail mail or a FaceTime or a Zoom call or a video message, email me letting me know, and I will make sure that we connect with them and that our community celebrates them. At the beginning of January, May, and September, our GP Kids and GP Youth participate in In-Reach Sunday. In-Reaches are opportunities for our GP community to serve our Nashville community. In January, our GP Kids and GP Youth set a goal of collecting 150 books for Bookum. Our GP Kids and GP Youth met this goal. Our GP Kids and GP Youth surpassed this goal. Once we were able to deliver these 150 books to Bookum, Bookum will distribute them to children in the Nashville area. To each of you who participated in this InReach, thank you. Our GP Kids discussion guide that is prepared for you each week is filled with helpful conversation prompts, links to read aloud books, as well as fun and simple craft and activity ideas that can be done from home with what you have. Our discussion guide this week talks about what InReach can look like for our families, even when we are spending most of our time at home. So many of you are living out the spirit of InReach in so many wonderful and creative ways. Thank you. Peace out, air hugs, and so much love to each and every one of you.
Good morning again, Grace Point. Just a couple of quick announcements as we continue on through this service today. Remember that at 10:30 you can log into your YouTube account and you can chat with some of your Grace Point friends. So take advantage of that time. Jump in a little bit earlier, around 10:30. Service begins at 10:45, so jump in at 10:30 and you can chat with some of the others in the Grace Point community. One thing that we're doing also on Facebook Live, this one is called Tuesdays at 2 with Josh. It's an opportunity for you to ask questions, throw anything at him, throw some weird stuff at him. That would be great. But every Tuesday at 2 p.m. on Facebook Live, questions and answers with Pastor Josh, called Tuesdays at 2 with Josh. We do a lot of things via the Zoom platform, and so we want to encourage you to go to our website, gracepoint.net/calendar, gracepoint with an E, remember that. gracepoint.net/calendar, and you can find a link to all of the different events, online events that are going on. First one of those that I want to make sure and remind you of is Reconstruct. Reconstruct is a great time. It's kind of a no holds barred kind of a thing, a discussion of what's been going on in your life, where are things at for you, questions about what's going, how do I do this whole deconstruct, reconstruct kind of a thing in my life and the way I view Scripture and Bible and God and all of those kinds of things. So Reconstruct is a great thing, and that's every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. You can find that again. That's a Zoom event, so you can find the link to that on the Grace Point website. Another thing too, Josh has begun doing an online Eucharist, an online communion time. Thursday evenings, Josh is hosting a virtual Eucharist meeting. And our community will have an opportunity to gather with others to hear a short reflection and celebrate communion together. So go to the website or to social media and you can find more information. You can find that on the Facebook page or on the website. But again, events like that, you can find out about them through the Zoom link. All of that's on our Grace Point website. I want to encourage you, even though we're not meeting together each week, as we love to do, hugging one another and connecting and all of that. One of the things that's really important that we not forget is as a church, there are still significant expenses that the church has to care for, both caring for one another and also caring for things like the rent on our space, even though that we're not in it. Things like that. So I really want to encourage you not to forget to be diligent in thinking about giving to the church. A couple of ways that you can do that and be helpful in that. One is the easiest one, of course, is by texting. Texting Grace Point with an E, Grace Point to 77977. That will take you to a way that you can give through that. Another way is to go to the Grace Point website, gracepoint.net/give. And that will walk you through how to do that as well. And it's a little tedious. It's more difficult to do that than just dropping something in the plate as it passes by. But I really want to encourage you. Let's continue to care for the needs of the church, because the church is caring for the needs of so many. So I want to encourage you to continue to be diligent in that. I think that's all that we have for you in the announcements today. So thank you so much, and I look forward to getting back together with you all face to face and getting one of those amazing hugs. Thank you.
Blessed are the ones who do not bury all the broken pieces of their heart.
Blessed are the tears of all the weary, pouring like a sky of falling stars. Blessed are the wounded ones in mourning, brave enough to show us all their scars. Blessed are the hurts that are not hidden, open to the healing touch of God. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope will be restored. Peace will come again.
Blessed are the ones who walk in kindness, even in the face of great abuse. Blessed are the deeds that go unnoticed, serving with unguarded gratitude. And blessed are the ones who fight for justice, longing for the coming day of peace. Blessed is the soul that thirsts for righteousness, welcoming the last, the lost, the least.
The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope will be restored. Peace will come again. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope will be restored. Peace will come again. Oh. Blessed are the ones who suffer violence, still have strength to love their enemies. Blessed is the faith of those who persevere. As though they fall, they'll never know defeat. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope will be restored. Peace will come again. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope will be restored. Peace will come again.
Good morning, Grace Point. We are so glad you're here today, especially if you're joining us for the very first time. We are so grateful that you're here. Today is the first Sunday of May, and there's part of me that's like, wow, it's May already. And then there's this other part of me that's like, wow, are we sure it's not actually October? Because it feels like this has been going on so long. But we're thrilled that you are here to continue the series we've been in for the last couple weeks called Meaning Making. We talked last week about the question, where is God during a pandemic? And today we're going to continue that, maybe shift a little bit and talk about praying during a pandemic. I don't know what your experience has been like, but for me, prayer has been one of the toughest ideas, concepts to reimagine through a progressive lens. When you cease to believe in some being that lives above the clouds and occasionally does a thing and then goes back up, what happens to prayer? How does this reimagined understanding of prayer that we're trying to create, how does it make sense during a time like this? But before we dive into talking about what I think prayer can be, if we are open to it, I want to talk a little bit about how prayer has been conceptualized in the popular Christian imagination. There are so many Christian cliches that just exist in the world, right? And it's interesting to me that a lot of them tend to center on prayer and the relationship between God and us and prayer. And so I'm going to share some of them. I bet you have others. Feel free to drop them in the comments section because we would love to know what I've missed. But here's some of the things I've thought about. And this is kind of a lengthy list, and so I'm only going to comment when I just can't stand it. Also, I'm going to comment on every single one of them because I just can't stand it. And so let's begin with sort of the one that I hear a lot, and that is prayer changes things. And all I want to say about that is we're going to come back to this, but I think the key question when we're asking, okay, does prayer change things? I think the key question is how. How does prayer change things? And we'll come back to that at the end. Another really familiar one is let go and let God, as if anything were that simple. Right? Like if it's possible to say, okay, I'm done. I'm letting go and now I'm letting God. I don't even know that we think about what that means or how difficult of a concept that is, that we just kind of let it go and forget about it. That's not how it works. The phrase, we need to lift them up in prayer. And I'm not saying this is not a valid phrase, but imagine how it sounds to somebody completely unfamiliar with Christian language and with Christian vocabulary. We're going to lift them up. It kind of creates in the imagination this where we're actually hoisting somebody up in prayer because maybe God can't hear them unless we bring them a little closer, or, where are we lifting them to? Up where we belong? What is going on? Where are we lifting them? And then there's thoughts and prayers, right? We talk about thoughts and prayers all the time. Every time there's something in our culture, some act of violence, some shooting, something, our go-to phrase is, let's remember them in our thoughts and prayers. And sometimes this is a genuine expression of concern, and I think we'll see that later on in the teaching. But I'm sure when we tell people that, we mean it generally. But in this cultural moment, this phrase has come to be sort of mockable because it functions as our go-to when we want to use our spirituality to mask our lack of moral courage, to tackle the pressing issues of the day, right? Like it's sort of a way of us saying, look how religious we are, but we aren't actually faithful enough to deal with the issues that are creating the needs for thoughts and prayers. And I just believe prayer cannot be a substitute for action. And I think we'll see more about that as we keep going too. Another phrase we hear a lot is we need everybody praying. What does that mean? Does God have sort of a threshold? Like if you don't get a certain amount of signatures on this petition, God's not going to pay attention to it? Would God actually refuse to heal someone just because enough people weren't asking for somebody to be healed or whatever they needed to be done? Is that really an image of God we want to hang on to? And then there's the phrase, I'll pray about it, which often happens when you get asked to do something that you really don't want to do. And so you just say, I'll pray about it. It's a Christian way of saying, I don't want to do it, but I don't want to disappoint you, so I'm going to let God disappoint you when God tells me definitely knows the answer, right? Then we have heard God always answers with a yes or a no. Nobody tell that to Garth Brooks. That would really mess up one of his songs. Saw this one recently. Worry is a conversation with myself. Prayer is a conversation with God. And I think that this really kind of illuminates the failure of the Christian tradition to take mental health seriously, especially when we tend to heap shame on people who are experiencing depression and anxiety. It's tragic, and we can't keep doing it. Worry and anxiety are natural parts of what it means to be a human being. And as we vilify it and bring shame on it, it actually doesn't help the process. I read this one. Prayer is earthly permission for a heavenly intervention. So like God would need permission to do a thing. And then does anybody remember prayer chains where something would happen and you would get a phone call and you would call somebody and they would call somebody and it was sort of this big prayer chain? It just came to my mind. I don't have comments on it. It just came to my mind. And then one of the things that has always been, as a pastor, really, really difficult for me is the idea of praying at high school sporting events. So in Kentucky, where I was pastoring before, I would do radio for the local radio station for football games. And a lot of times I would be up in the broadcast booth and the announcer would ask me if I would pray because maybe they didn't get somebody or they couldn't find somebody else. And it's just one of those things I never knew what to say. What do you say? Pray. Number one, should we even be praying at a high school sporting event? And number two, what do we pray for? Oh, God, help us vanquish our foes and enemies. Is that the sort of prayer? I just can't do that anymore because I don't know what to say in those moments. Whew, that was a lot. But it feels important to survey how we consciously, or even I think subconsciously or unconsciously think about prayer, because I think prayer has a God-sized problem. And here's what I mean by that. If we think about prayer specifically as asking God to do something, asking God to change the outcome, asking God to give us a thing, asking God for something, and essentially asking God to intervene. What happens if God doesn't intervene? Or what happens if God intervenes for them, but God doesn't intervene for us, or God intervenes for us, but doesn't intervene for them? I think there's a hope, an unintended insensitivity that occurs when people credit God for healing, fixing, and protecting them, because it's very, very possible that there's somebody else in that earshot of that conversation or somebody else at that table who has had a similar experience that turned out very, very differently. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be grateful. I think we need more gratitude than ever in this life. But I am saying, I think sometimes when we sort of our theology seeps into our discussion, we can unintentionally give the message that this is how God works. God sometimes favors us, but God doesn't favor you. For some reason, God healed my person, but God didn't heal your person. Or for some reason, God gave me the job, but didn't give you the job. Or for some reason, God did a thing for me, and God didn't do a thing for you, right? That when you drive by the police car and you're going 15 over and you start praying, Jesus, Jesus, don't let me get pulled over. And you don't get pulled over. And you're like, whew, answered a prayer. But then somebody else dies and they were praying to be rescued in some way. Like, I think there's an unattended, and I think it creates a God-sized problem. If God intervenes for some and not for all, is that really good? If God is going around keeping people from speeding tickets but not curing cancer, if God's going around not solving world hunger but like helping people get a better score in the ACT, is that a kind of God we want to be in relationship with? I think that when we actually sit down and process the things we're saying, we can begin to understand that when we speak theologically, whether we think we're speaking theologically or not, we are painting a picture of the kind of God we believe in, that we talk about. And is this the kind of God, the God who pops in, bippity-boppity boos some stuff for this person and just doesn't for this other person because maybe not enough people were praying or not enough people were asking, and so God didn't feel compelled to like pop down for that? So I think that the idea of God as an interventionist can actually create more problems than it solves. Now, I'm not saying if you believe that, that's okay. I think things happen that are unexplainable. I don't always know why things happen the way they do. I still pray for those sorts of things. I pray for my family. I pray for my friends. I pray for our community. I pray for all those things, just like I would if I believed God was popping in and out. I just don't know that it happens that way. But you believe what you want. I still think, even if that's not the case, if God's not popping in and out, I still think prayer can be a meaningful, transformative practice, especially in the days we live in. And I want to share a few reasons why and a few things about it that have become meaningful to me. First, I think prayer can be about naming and being present to our feelings and our longings. Didn't most of us grow up in a tradition that said, don't trust your feelings and suppress your longings? And I think that what prayer does actually gets us in tune with our feelings and our longings and allows us to begin to express them. And as we begin to express them, it does something to us. Now, I don't want to say a lot about this, because in the 17th of this month, we're going to be talking about learning to lament, which is something that is sort of a lost art in the Western world for lots of us. So I want to talk more about this then, but I think that prayer can be a way of being present and naming the pain, the grief, the loss, the hope, and all those things that we're carrying around with us all the time. So I think prayer can do that. Second, I think prayer can be an act of solidarity. I think prayer is about standing with someone. So when we pray for somebody else, we become aware of their needs. We become aware of their situation. We become aware of maybe even ways that we can then help, ways we can plug into the situation and get involved. And there's something about feeling not alone in the world. All right, there's something about seeing somebody else who's going through what you're going through, or they've been through it, or they're going through something else, and you can sort of stand together through that can be so meaningful, and actually, even in the worst moments, can be really, really hopeful and life-giving. Now, here's just a silly example. When you move from the place you've always known, and you see somebody else from that place or supporting that locale, and you'll see why I say that in a minute, it does something to you. So I grew up on the Kentucky-West Virginia line. I identify both Kentucky and West Virginia. And growing up, we were always fans and still are rabid fans of the West Virginia Mountaineers. Something interesting happens. I tend to be like out in the wild, more of an introvert. I'm not going to really just strike up random conversations with people I don't know necessarily. When they used to take us in the church bus and drop us off at the mall when we were youth, and we had to try to witness to people and make them become Christian in some way. I was terrible at that because I wasn't super excited about talking to strangers I didn't know. I believed my parents, and I don't talk to strangers. But when I see somebody, whether it's here in town, whether it's somewhere else, when I see somebody wearing a WV on their hat, or I see a license plate or a sticker, I immediately, in some strange way, even though I bet our beliefs about things may not line up, and our politics probably don't line up, and none of the things that you would expect to line up, there's something about me that feels connected to them in some way. Like they know the joy of biting into a hot pepperoni roll. And if you don't know that joy, I pray it finds you in this life at some point. Right? So I will go out of my shell in ways that I won't normally when I see somebody wearing the same logo of the team or the state that I have so many fond memories of, right? It pulls me out of myself and into some sort of sense of connection, even though we're not super connected. And I think prayer allows us to do that. It allows us to realize that when somebody says to you, or somebody says to me, I'm praying for you, and it doesn't come off like a threat, right? But when they say, I'm praying for you, it makes you realize they're going to be thinking about me. As I'm going through what I'm going through, at least somebody out there has my back, and they know, and maybe they'll check in. And hopefully what prayer does is it leads us also into something, into a way. I'm aware of a need, so how can I come alongside this person and carry the weight with them and support them and walk this path with them? I think that in that way, prayer isn't weak. It isn't a cop-out. When you know somebody's journeying with you, it provides a source of strength. And I've seen this happen time and time again in situation after situation where somebody's going through a really difficult moment, whether it's a loss of someone they love, whether it's a diagnosis, whether it's a loss of a job. There are so many different things that happen to us in the world. And I've seen people surround one another in love and compassion and even prayer. And I've seen that solidarity and that sense of community. I've seen it breathe life into people who didn't think they would keep going. I have been in situation after situation where I believe somebody actually made it through because they had the support of other people. That maybe they would have collapsed in on themselves, but they had people around them saying essentially, keep going because we're going to keep going with you. And I think that that's what prayer, in one aspect of prayer, I think it moves us into solidarity. It moves us into the awareness of other people and what's going on in their lives and what they need. It sort of brings us out of just being so focused on us that we can begin to realize that there are other people in the world around us who have needs, and other people, and we can meet those needs. Right? I can show up and be a presence. I can make a phone call. I can send a text message. I can order some pizzas and pay for them and have it delivered to their house. I can do a thing that would let them know that I'm in solidarity with them. So I think prayer isn't this cop-out where you just go, well, I'm going to go pray for you, which means I'm not doing anything. I think prayer is actually something that if we're really doing it, it would lead us to get our hands dirty pretty quickly. It would lead us into some sort of action and involvement. Because to stand in solidarity isn't just standing, it's an action, right? It's coming along and saying, I see you, I hear you, I'm with you, you are not alone. And I believe that that can keep us going when everything in us wants to just give up. And so prayer can be an act of solidarity. Finally, I think prayer can be a way of centering and strengthening ourselves. I think prayer can be a way of us quieting the noise, and maybe you would even use meditation here, right? It's a very similar practice, I think. But quieting the noise, bringing our whole selves into the moment, and allowing us to gain strength and sort of a place of center when everything feels off-center. And right now, this time feels really off-center. Everything feels wonky and out of place. So I think prayer can be a way for us to center ourselves before we even engage a day, before we even engage a moment, before we engage a difficult conversation. Prayer can be a way for us to begin to prepare ourselves for all of that. And this is exactly how it seems prayer worked for Jesus and his life. There's a couple examples. One is very early on in the life of Jesus in Mark chapter 1. Jesus is just starting his public activity, and he's made a big splash. And in Mark chapter 1, he does something. He's at the home of one of his disciples named Peter, and Peter's mother-in-law is ill. And so Jesus heals her. Word spreads quickly that this miraculous event has occurred. And then just a couple verses later, here's what it says in Mark 1:32 through 35. That evening at sunset, people brought to Jesus those who were sick or demon-possessed. The whole town gathered near the door. He healed many who were sick with all kinds of diseases, and he threw out many demons. But he didn't let the demons speak because they recognized him. Early in the morning, well before sunrise, Jesus rose and went to a deserted place where he could be alone in prayer. Now, if I'm being 100% honest, if I'm Jesus here, I probably hit the snooze button and say I'll do it later, right? I mean, Jesus has had this labor-intensive experience of providing healing and comfort and seeing people and transforming their experience. And what does Jesus do? He wakes up early and he goes off by himself. And it seems like the thing he's doing when he's by himself, the word is prayer, but it also seems to be this sort of energizing, recharging. He's spent all kinds of energy. And I think we know this, right? Because you can have a full night's sleep and be exhausted. How many of you have been parenting through the quarantine? I see those hands. And you know that you can get a full night's sleep and you can wake up and be exhausted. There's tired and then there's soul tired. There's I put in a hard day of labor and then there's I poured myself out on behalf of other people. Both are hard, but there's something about emptying your energies out for other people to be energized by that can leave you exhausted. And it really does not matter how much sleep you get. You're still going to be drained at some sort of core level, deep in the center of your being. You've expended your energy and now you have to do something to put it back in. I think for many of us, we are continually running on that tank is low and we're continually trying to do the same activity. And no wonder it's exhausting and no wonder we don't have the energy and no wonder we just keep pouring ourselves out. And Jesus takes this moment and he slips away to a quiet, isolated place and he prays. And that prayer energizes him for the next leg of the journey. Now, I wonder for how many of us, if we were to take a regular practice of prayer, meditation, and for those of us who do, I mean, you know what this does in your life. How might it transform our experiences? What might it do in us? One of the ways I try to do this is there's an app called Headspace. And one of the things I'm grateful for, and we had this conversation on one of our live chats this week, but one of the things I'm grateful for is often when I'm sort of doing that prayer and meditation and just trying to center myself, my brain immediately starts going a million other places. And I love what the voice inside my phone says to me when he or she says, if you notice your mind wandering, just let it go for a moment, observe it, and bring it back. Let it go. Acknowledge that it's gone and bring it back to your breath. And there's something about, because I think prayer may be a place where a lot of us end up with extra guilt, right? Where we aren't good enough prayers. A lot of times people use the language of prayer warrior, which is just kind of uncomfortable for me, but I'm not a prayer warrior. I'm like a prayer court jester or something. I'm not getting it right. But there's something about, no, there's no shame. There's no shame. Did you fall asleep during prayer? That's okay. You were tired. Did your mind wander and you thought about something else? Okay, just bring it back to your breath. Give yourself grace. The point of prayer is not to check off a box. I think the point of prayer is to regain our center and to regain our energy and regain our strength to go and give it away in the world in all the creative, interesting ways we choose to do that. And then there's, at the end of Jesus' life, another moment when he's about to be betrayed, arrested, essentially abandoned and executed. And Jesus goes into a place called the Garden of Gethsemane, and he prays. And as he goes into the garden, he actually says to his disciples, sit here. This is Mark 14. He took Peter, James, and John along with him. He began to feel despair and was anxious. Think about that. Jesus began to feel despair and was anxious. I think Jesus senses that the Romans are starting to, and those they are collaborating with among his own people are starting, that it's getting tighter and it's getting more and more dangerous. And he knows that his moment is coming. And he said to them, I'm very sad. It's as if I'm dying. And then Jesus goes in and prays for the cup to be passed off to someone else. At the beginning of his work, Jesus expended energy and he went recentered and re-strengthened. Before the end of his work, Jesus goes into a quiet place alone, and he's honest and he's sad and he's anxious and he's weeping, and he knows that this is going to be difficult. And I think it's interesting that he chooses to pray there. It must have been a source of strength. So I think prayer can be not a substitute for action, but the impetus and energy that propels us to act. Right? Saying I'm praying for you shouldn't be a cop-out. What it should mean is that I'm thinking of you and I'm praying for you, and that prayer comes with a commitment to act in whatever way I can to support you and stand with you in solidarity with you, right? Thoughts and prayers shouldn't be the thing we say when we're refusing the integrity to do the great moral action we need to take. What if thoughts and prayers were the thing we actually express to people who are going through a difficult time? And what if it came with the understanding that if you're in my thoughts and prayers, I'm here for you. Here's my phone number. What's your address? I'm going to send you over some pizza. I like pizza. We're going to send you pizza. Whatever that looks like. Thoughts and prayers can be something more than just sort of a cop-out. It can be the ground of our action. It can be the thing that pushes us out to remember one another and to remember those we love and remember those they're praying for, and then actually do something to stand alongside them. I do not think it's simple. I don't think prayer is this equation where we say the right words and enough of us say them and God comes in to bippity boppity boo it all and everything is good, like a 30-minute sitcom sort of arrangement. I think in the messiness of life and all of the anger and all of the pain, we can find a place of centering and strength, even if we don't want to, listen, even if you don't want to imagine, because I don't imagine this, that you're praying to a being that's above the clouds, an old man with a long beard and a big robe, and if you say the right words, this old man will come down and fix it. I'm not saying that. If you can imagine praying to a being, I still think prayer can be life-giving and transforming. It can be a place of centering when you calm yourself and you calm your world and you open yourself to be honest about where you are and the energy that you've expended, and it opens you up to receive more of that back in, I think. So, does prayer change things? That was the first cliche we looked at, right? Does prayer change things? And I said maybe, but I think the question is how. And here's how I think prayer changes things. Prayer changes things because prayer changes us. Prayer changes things because prayer changes us. Prayer calls us to stand alongside one another. Prayer gives us the courage to begin to articulate our feelings and our longings and the things we're carrying around that are heavy and full of pain and anguish and loss. It gives us the courage to begin to speak those things or write those things or somehow actually engage with those things that we normally want to just sweep under the rug because they're not pretty. Prayer gives us the courage to come alongside each other and say, you're not in this alone. We are absolutely 1,000,000% together in this. In any way I can be with you and stand with you and stand alongside you, I am here and I have your back. When prayer takes on that kind of, when prayer is embodied in action, prayer changes everything. It is not a cop-out. It actually is a source of strength, courage, energy, and it pushes us out into the world to go be those kinds of human beings, to get our hands dirty by helping one another in the messiness, muck, and mire of life. Now, I'm not saying that everybody in this watching this right now needs to take 5 and pray, but what I am saying is, if you find yourself sort of empty, running on empty, you've expended a lot, maybe take 10 minutes. Listen to the Headspace app. Let it lead you into some meditation. Let it lead you into some prayer, and let's see if we don't get filled back up by it. I'm not saying that you should pray morning, noon, and night, but maybe we find a spot in the day to just be quiet and be still and listen to ourselves, but also listen for whatever else may be coming for us and being spoken to us. Maybe it's being quiet and listening to the birds and being reminded that the birds have everything they need, that they are cared for, and that you and I are cared for, and we're not alone. And maybe that's the greatest gift prayer gives us. It's not being alone. Knowing that someone is thinking of us, someone is praying for us, they're expending their energy for us, and that they are there together with us, even in this.
I tried to talk to my piano, I tried to talk to my guitar, I talked to my imagination, confided into alcohol. I tried and tried and tried some more, told secrets till my voice was sore. I'm tired of empty conversation, 'cause no one hears me anymore. 100 million stories and 100 million songs. I feel stupid when I sing. Nobody's listening to me. Nobody's listening. I talk to shooting stars, but they always get it wrong. I feel stupid when I pray. And why am I praying anyway? If nobody's listening, anyone, please send me anyone. Lord, is there anyone? I need someone. Oh, anyone, please send me anyone. Is there anyone? I need someone. I used to crave the world's attention. I think I cried too many times. I just need some more affection, anything to get me by. 100 million stories and 100 million songs. I feel stupid when I sing, 'cause nobody's listening to me. Nobody's listening. I talk to shooting stars, but they always get it wrong. I feel stupid when I pray. Why am I praying anyway? If nobody's listening, anyone, please send me anyone. Lord, is there anyone? I need someone. Oh, anyone, please send me anyone. Oh Lord, is there anyone? I need someone. Oh, anyone, is there anyone? Ooh, I need someone. 100 million stories and 100 million songs. I feel stupid when I sing. Nobody's listening to me. Nobody's listening.
Thank you again so much for being here today, Grace Point. We are so thrilled to have you with us. We miss you, as we say every week. We miss your presence. We miss your hugs. We miss your physical presence in the room with us. I'm so tired of preaching to a camera. At the same time, we recognize we're doing the best thing we can do right now by continuing to follow the guidelines and the orders. So just know that when we are together again, it's going to be amazing, and we can't wait for that moment when it comes. Hope you have a great week. If you have responses, feedback, if you'd like to share how this landed in your life, please feel free to shoot me an email, josh@gracepointwithane.net. And I'd love to hear from you. If you need pastoral care, whatever you need, you can go to gracepoint.net, and you can find in the community life page, you can find ways to let us know what's going on, or you can just email me. So thanks so much for being with us today. Hope you have an incredible week ahead of you doing whatever you're doing. Hope you find ways when you're pouring out your energy all the time for other people. I hope you find ways to pour a little bit more energy back into you. And when you're caring for other people, that you find a moment when you can begin to care for you as well, because you can't give out what you don't have in, right? You can't give energy off empty energy. So I hope we'll find a time this week to maybe pour some stuff into us, some goodness into us, so that we continue to be people who come alongside one another and who support one another, because that's what it means to be in community. Thanks a lot, Grace Point. We'll see you soon. Grace and peace.